In the midst of a busy airport terminal, a young girl named Sophia faced an unexpected and unfair challenge. Her boarding pass was torn up by a gate agent, simply because of assumptions and biases. As a teenager traveling alone, Sophia stood her ground despite feeling humiliated, and the situation escalated when her father, a powerful business figure, intervened. This story reveals the power of standing up for what's right, even in the face of prejudice, and the importance of having people who support you when life feels unjust. If you found inspiration in this story, don't forget to like, comment where you're watching from, share this video with friends, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories like this. Your support helps spread the message of fairness and equality. The terminal buzzed with the familiar tension that always settles over travelers rushing to their destinations. Amid the bustling concourse, a young girl named Sophia stood near the gate, eyes bright with anticipation. This was her first solo trip, returning home after attending a prestigious leadership conference for teenagers. The noise around her was a symphony of rolling suitcases, beeping announcements, and fragmented conversations from passers-by. Sophia wore a neatly pressed button-down shirt and jeans, clutching her boarding pass and passport while her heart raced with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. She knew her father held an important position in the business world, but she'd been raised hearing him say that a person's worth wasn't measured by material success and that humility cost nothing. Despite these teachings, waves of anxiety still washed over her whenever she found herself in public spaces where no one recognized who she was, or more importantly, who her father happened to be. Sophia approached the gate counter with a polite smile. The gate agent, whose name tag read Patricia, barely acknowledged her. Patricia's lips tightened into a thin line as she examined Sophia's boarding pass. Her eyes flickered briefly over Sophia's face and her braided hair before settling on Sophia's name. "Are you traveling alone?" Patricia asked, her tone sharp. "Yes, ma'am," Sophia replied quietly. "I'm heading home to see my family." Patricia's gaze traveled up and down, silently judging. Sophia had encountered subtle stares before but usually brushed them off. There was no reason to suspect anything unusual would happen today. She handed over her passport, waiting for the standard procedure of checking seats and confirming identity. Patricia gave a quick nod and returned the passport. Then she studied the boarding pass again as though searching for signs of tampering. Sophia sensed a shift in the gate agent's posture, something rigid and defensive that reminded her of teachers from her past who had doubted her abilities, the type who scrutinized her homework more closely than others. A trickle of unease ran through her, but she had no intention of causing a scene. Patricia pursed her lips. "This boarding pass doesn't look valid." Sophia frowned, glancing at the document in the agent's hand. "It's definitely valid. I confirmed everything when I left the conference this morning." "It doesn't look valid to me," Patricia repeated, her voice growing louder. Several heads turned in their direction, travelers curious about the commotion. Sophia felt embarrassment rising within her. She wanted to handle the situation politely, mindful that losing her temper would do no good. "That's the boarding pass that was booked for me by my father's office," she said, speaking as calmly as possible. Patricia waved off the explanation and stared pointedly at Sophia. "Sure it was. Don't try to pull a fast one. I've seen plenty of passengers like you trying to board flights they're not entitled to." Sophia felt a flash of anger. That final phrase stung, "passengers like you." She wondered what Patricia meant by that. The uneasy suspicion she had about the woman's attitude began to solidify. Her father had warned her about moments like this, people making quick judgments before knowing anything. Still, she tried to keep her tone steady. "I promise this is a legitimate boarding pass," she insisted. "Maybe you could scan it again." Instead of rechecking the computer, Patricia scoffed and rolled her eyes dismissively. A tense pause followed, during which Sophia could hear her own heartbeat echoing in her ears. Patricia's face hardened, and in a sudden motion that shocked everyone nearby, she ripped the boarding pass in two. The sound of tearing paper cut through the normal airport chatter. Sophia's eyes widened in disbelief. "What are you doing?" "That's my boarding pass." Patricia ignored her protest. "Move along, little girl. I'm not letting you board with a fraudulent document. Go find another flight if you can pay for it." A few onlookers stared. Some whispered to one another, while others took a step forward as if wanting to intervene. Sophia felt her cheeks burn not just with embarrassment but with a pulsing anger that almost made her forget the values her father had taught her. She clutched the halves of the torn boarding pass, words stuck in her throat. She could call her father and have him fix this immediately, but she hated drawing attention that way. She'd always wanted to stand on her own 2 feet. Still, this went beyond anything she'd experienced before. She had every right to stand up for herself, but as she opened her mouth to speak, Patricia had already turned to the next passenger, completely ignoring her. Sophia moved away from the counter, her mind swirling with confusion, humiliation, and righteous anger. She was determined not to cry. Taking a deep breath, she opened her phone and dialed her father. If anyone could help, it was him, but she didn't want to begin with a complaint. Instead, she took a moment to calm her voice. He answered on the second ring. "Sophia? Is everything all right? You should be boarding soon." She could hear the concern in his voice. "Dad, there's a problem. They won't let me board. The gate agent said my boarding pass was fraudulent, and she tore it up." Silence greeted her on the other end. Then her father cleared his throat, his voice measured but with a tense undercurrent. "Let me handle this. Where exactly are you standing now?" Sophia told him her location. He assured her everything would be resolved and told her to wait. She ended the call, still shaking from the incident. She glanced around at the other passengers. Some looked at her with pity, others with curiosity, and a few awkwardly looked away as if they couldn't bear to witness the situation. Sophia wished she could disappear. She didn't want to cause a scene or fight, but she also knew she wasn't in the wrong. Meanwhile, across the country, her father, Robert Mitchell, sat in an office that few people knew existed. He was the silent power behind one of the largest airlines in the nation, an empire built from a small charter service decades ago. Over the years, he had consolidated partnerships, expanded routes, and maintained the brand's polished reputation. He also took pride in treating his employees well, personally intervening to help staff members during difficult times. To Robert, success meant little without compassion and fairness. Upon hearing his daughter's distressed voice, he felt a surge of protective anger he rarely experienced. He seldom flaunted his position, believing his work should speak for itself, but this incident crossed all lines of decency, especially since he recognized exactly what prejudice looked like when it reared its ugly head. He rose from behind his desk, made a brief call to his executive assistant, and left instructions for immediate action. Then he walked out, ignoring the surprised looks from his staff. Usually, he moved calmly through the corporate corridors. Today, his stride was purposeful, his jaw set. Within minutes, he was in a company car heading directly to the airport to meet his daughter. Sophia didn't know exactly what her father was doing, but she trusted him completely. She decided to stand quietly to the side of the gate, refusing to be chased away. She had every right to be there. She watched Patricia help other passengers with forced politeness, but whenever Patricia glanced in Sophia's direction, Sophia saw the same disapproval glinting in her eyes. Sophia wondered how such a person got a job as a gate agent. In theory, they were supposed to help travelers, not tear up boarding passes and humiliate them in public. As she waited, Sophia remembered a conversation she'd once had with her father. He had mentioned wanting to maintain a low profile so that she and her siblings would understand the value of hard work and humility. In this world, you'll meet people who can't see past their own biases, he had warned. Handle them with poise, know your worth, and if it comes down to it, I'll always have your back. She felt cautiously relieved knowing her father was on his way. She clutched the torn pieces of her boarding pass, half tempted to approach Patricia again, but the humiliating memory of the public scene held her back. Instead, she took a seat near the window, gazing out at planes taxiing along the tarmac. Her mind wandered to the friends she'd made at the conference. They had shared dreams of becoming astronauts, entrepreneurs, humanitarian activists. One friend had confided that he wanted to be the first in his family to finish college. Their enthusiasm had given Sophia clearer vision for her own future. She wanted to make a difference, perhaps by following in her father's footsteps but with her own unique approach. She wasn't certain which path to choose, but she knew that moments like this, standing up against unfairness, would shape her character. Time passed, and her phone vibrated. Robert had texted, "I'm here. Meet me in front of the information kiosk." Sophia stood, nerves fluttering. She caught Patricia's narrowed gaze once more but refused to look away. Instead, she offered a polite nod, which Patricia did not return. Sophia made her way through the busy terminal, weaving past hurried travelers, families with strollers, and backpackers until she found her father standing near a digital display board listing departures and arrivals. He wore a crisp suit, nothing flashy, but enough to signal he wasn't an ordinary passenger. The moment she saw him, she fought back tears. He pulled her into a hug, and she felt the tension in her chest begin to ease. "I'm sorry you had to go through that," Robert said softly. She swallowed hard. "Dad, she ripped my boarding pass in half right there at the gate. She practically called me a fraud." He nodded, his expression grim. "Let's address it. Stay by my side." They walked together toward the gate area. Several staff members recognized Robert. Their eyes widened, and they hurried to greet him, confusion and fear mingling in their expressions. He calmly asked who the supervisor on duty was. Someone pointed toward an older man in a dark blazer standing near the check-in counters. Robert led Sophia in that direction, ignoring the stares of passing travelers. The supervisor, named Thomas, seemed startled when he saw Robert approach. "Mr. Mitchell," he said, clearing his throat. "Is there something I can help you with?" Robert's tone was polite but firm. "Yes, Thomas. My daughter's boarding pass was destroyed by a member of your staff. I'd like to know why." Shock flashed across Thomas's face. His gaze flickered to Sophia and the torn halves of the boarding pass in her hand. He turned pale. "Destroyed? That's highly unprofessional. Who was it?" Before Sophia could speak, Patricia stepped forward. She tried to maintain a confident posture, but her voice wavered slightly. "I found the boarding pass suspicious, sir. I have to protect the integrity of our flights. Robert, still calm, raised a hand. You tore a valid boarding pass. Even if you doubted its legitimacy, there's a process. You don't humiliate a passenger and destroy their property. Do you realize what you've done? Patricia seemed to struggle with her response. She glanced at Sophia but refused to meet her eyes. I did what I thought was right. I've seen a lot of counterfeits. Thomas stepped in, trying to diffuse the tension. Mr. Mitchell, let's go to a quieter area to sort this out. We don't want a public scene. Sophia thought about objecting, but she saw her father's slight nod. He recognized the importance of keeping things civil. They followed Thomas down a short corridor to a staff-only area behind the check-in desk, where a few chairs and a desk stood. Patricia trailed behind them, her expression shifting between defiance and apprehension. Robert motioned for Sophia to sit, then turned to Thomas. I'm not here to cause unnecessary trouble, but this incident must be addressed. My daughter was treated unfairly. For your information, I paid for her boarding pass in full through legitimate channels. There is no excuse for an employee to act like this. Thomas nodded, wringing his hands. I agree, sir. This is unacceptable. I sincerely apologize on behalf of the airline. Patricia opened her mouth as if to protest, but no words came out. Sophia watched her, feeling a mixture of anger and sadness. She knew this moment could be a teaching opportunity or perhaps a chance for accountability. Robert continued, his voice low. We pride ourselves on treating all passengers with respect, no matter who they are. If an employee is showing bias, that's not just a personal failing, it undermines our company's core values. Thomas cleared his throat. Of course, sir. We'll take immediate disciplinary action. He turned to Sophia, looking truly apologetic. I am so sorry. We will make this right. Sophia nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. Thank you. I don't like causing trouble. I just want to get home. Robert placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. He turned to Patricia and spoke with carefully measured words. Is there anything you'd like to say to my daughter? Patricia's face was tense, but a flicker of guilt crossed her features. She exhaled shakily. I'm sorry if I offended you. Sophia didn't respond immediately, letting the apology sink in. Something about Patricia's tone felt more forced than genuine. Sophia glanced at her father, who gave a subtle nod encouraging her to speak. I accept your apology, she said softly. But I hope you understand the seriousness of what you did. It's not just about a boarding pass. It's about how you treated me. Patricia pressed her lips together, her knuckles tight around the edge of the desk. She didn't respond. It was clear she didn't fully grasp the depth of her wrongdoing, or maybe refused to admit it. Sophia felt a pang of disappointment. She had always tried to believe people could change if shown the right path. Robert concluded the meeting quickly after that. He turned to Thomas. I trust you'll handle the details. For now, I want to make sure my daughter can board her flight. Thomas hurriedly issued a replacement boarding pass, this time making sure Sophia had a seat in first class. He apologized repeatedly, promising to follow up. Robert thanked him curtly, and without another glance at Patricia, he led Sophia out of the office and back into the terminal. Before going to the gate, Robert took Sophia aside, his expression softening. Are you all right? That was quite an ordeal. Sophia managed a small smile. I'm okay. I guess this is just what you warned me about. Robert sighed. It doesn't make it right, and it doesn't make it easy to deal with. They made their way to a lounge area where they could talk privately. Sophia settled into a comfortable seat, her father sitting across from her. She noticed a few airport employees peering at Robert from a distance, no doubt recognizing him. She felt a swirl of pride and relief, tempered by the lingering sting of humiliation. Her father leaned forward, folding his hands. Your flight leaves soon, and I could fly with you if you'd like. I have a meeting back home anyway. Sophia appreciated the offer. The idea of flying with her father gave her a sense of comfort after what had just happened. She agreed, and within minutes, Robert had arranged for his own ticket. They passed through the gate together. Patricia was nowhere to be seen. Thomas was there, forcing a polite smile and wishing them a pleasant flight. Sophia noticed how other gate agents suddenly appeared extra helpful, directing them toward the jet bridge. Once on the plane, Sophia and her father took their seats in the plush first-class cabin. Sophia looked around at the spacious seats, feeling a twinge of awkwardness. She usually traveled economy by choice, wanting to experience the world without all the privileges her father's status could afford. But this time, she decided to accept the convenience. She wanted space to clear her head. As the plane began to fill, Sophia watched the steady stream of passengers searching for overhead bin space, struggling with seat assignments, and corralling children. She sensed a shift in the cabin's atmosphere as people noticed Robert's presence. Some recognized him from business magazines or interviews. She felt the dissonance of anonymity and fame colliding. Just an hour earlier, she had been treated like a second-class citizen. Now, because of her father, she was receiving subtle nods of deference. It was a jarring reminder of how differently the world treated people based on perceived status. They buckled in, and soon the plane taxied onto the runway. As it roared into the sky, Sophia leaned back against the seat, tension drifting away. She glanced at her father, who offered a reassuring smile. Get some rest, he suggested. It's been a long day. She tried to sleep, but her mind raced with thoughts. She wondered if Patricia would face serious consequences, or if the apology and disciplinary talk would fade into a quiet shuffle of airline bureaucracy. A part of her felt relief that justice had been served in some way, but another part knew that not everyone could call their father to fix a situation. Some people face discrimination daily with no one to back them up. The story of Sophia highlights the power of standing up for oneself in the face of unfair treatment, even when it seems difficult or uncomfortable. Sophia, despite her youth, handled a demeaning situation with dignity and poise, choosing not to let prejudice define her worth. Her father, a silent powerhouse in the business world, demonstrated the importance of empathy and support, showing that sometimes, standing up for what is right requires both personal integrity and outside help. The experience serves as a reminder that individuals often face bias and unjust treatment based on their appearance or background, but that does not mean they should accept it quietly. The key lesson here is that standing firm in the face of adversity can create ripples of change. While Sophia's father used his influence to make things right, not everyone has the same privilege. The story encourages a collective responsibility to challenge discrimination in all its forms and to stand up for fairness and dignity, whether for ourselves or others. We must remember that no matter who we are, we deserve respect and the opportunity to be treated fairly. This lesson extends beyond the airport and into everyday life, reminding us that standing up for ourselves and for others can spark meaningful change. We must be willing to speak out and act, knowing that change begins when we refuse to tolerate injustice. If you found this story inspiring, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell to stay updated on more powerful content like this. Let us know where you're watching from in the comments, and share the message of standing strong with others.